Today, we don't have our usual hour and a half, so I want to introduce you to, those of you who do not know yet, Mac Bica, who is a well-known person, has been here several times. We're delighted to welcome him back. Mac is really the founder of the Long Island Veterans for Peace, and also part of the National Veterans for Peace. In his free time, he is also a professor at the School for Visual Arts in New York, and he is not only going to talk about Afghanistan, but the importance of removing our troops from Afghanistan, that process, that challenge, and then of course what then, what after. And again, Mac is a wonderful person, not only to talk about these issues, but he's kind of walked the talk. He's been there, and so we're delighted that he'll be here. And then we'll be joined by student commentators afterwards, and I'll introduce them to you then. And as always, hopefully some time for good questions from the audience, keeping in mind we've got mics on the floor. So please join me in welcoming Mac Bica.
Just give us a second to get this. I don't know how well known I am. But,
Well, here you are.
Infamous, maybe. I hope some of you were upstairs during the last segment to a very interesting discussion. Hi, Sister Jean. Interesting discussion with the Afghan youth. Anyone up there? Oh, it was great. Probably one of the best ways of trying to understand Afghanistan and them understanding us, people, person to person, is by that kind of communication. And it's just such a valuable instrument of diplomacy. It seems that we don't put much value in diplomacy anymore for some reason. I'm always reminded of that old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So it seems that all we have is the military and bombing. So everything that we confront and everything that we find to do, oh, might I need this?
Well, it'll help us record.
Oh, do I have this? Everything that we encounter seems to require war and bombing. This morning we spoke about Iran for a bit, and a very spirited dialogue about whether we should stay and be there or we should bomb them or whatever. And today we're going to go on to talk about a place where we are actually already fighting a war. As many of you know, we just completed our 11th year in Afghanistan. Depending when you pinpoint the start of the Vietnam War, I think officially it's 65 or late 64, Afghanistan is now the longest war. So, what are we doing there? One of the questions that was asked by the students to the kids, and they are kids, college-age kids and high school kids, one of the questions that was asked was, well, how would you want to see American involvement? Do you want America to stay in Afghanistan? And all you heard was one unanimous yell, and then it was translated as no. So obviously, at least that representation of the people would prefer that America not continue its involvement in Afghanistan. I don't know if that's indicative of how everyone feels. I doubt that it is. And I would imagine there are other people who have different points of view. But certainly it gives us an indication of the common Afghans' view of the war. Are we not going to get that up there?
I'm trying.
You're working on it. Okay. What I want to talk about It's really critical that I have that because I have all sorts of statistics that I don't feel like having to go through. What I want to talk about, I'm supposed to tell you who I am. I was told this. As was mentioned, I'm a professor of philosophy at the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and my focus in philosophy is ethics, ethics especially as it relates to war. And the reason why I'm interested in the subject of war is that I'm also a retired former Marine Corps officer with the platoon commander, served as platoon commander in Vietnam. So I have some interest in war, and has spent virtually my whole life trying to understand it. When I was a kid, I wanted to be John Wayne, and as I became a teenager, I wanted to be a Marine officer, and then I became that. And then for the rest of my life, I tried to understand what it was that I did and what it was that I became as a result of going through that experience. That's who I am, and that's why I do what I do. My focus in philosophy has always been the whether or not it's right or wrong, our being in Afghanistan. Now, for the last 10 years or so, even before, that never really goes over all that well. I don't know why that is, and I'm sure American people are concerned about rightness, about morality, about legality. But at least when it came to our involvement in these wars, and we see it again now with Iran, by the way, which is very scary. You'd think by now we would have at least paid attention to these sorts of things. But what we seem to be more concerned with is, I don't know, what some celebrity is doing, what some celebrity is not doing. And we don't seem to worry much about the war. I teach a course over at SVA in mythology of war, and on my first day in class, I always mention to the students, why are you here? Why are you taking this course in war? And what do you think about what's going on? So they say, where? And I say, well, in Afghanistan. So they say, why? Are we at war in Afghanistan? So I said, yeah. So it seems as though, now those are art students who are very concerned about their art, and we would hope, and our job is to get them to be concerned, to see the relationship between their art and other things as well, and needless to say, it's a little bit challenging sometimes. But I think that may be indicative as well as of America in general, that we were told by our former president to just go shopping, and many of us do. This has really been a successful campaign, I think, of diverting attention away from the war. As you remember, if you happen to watch the Republican convention, you would remember that if you were just basing your awareness about what's going on what was being told to you, you would never know that we are at war in Afghanistan or anywhere else for that matter. It was just not an issue that was mentioned. In the Democratic convention, they did a little celebration over the killing of Osama bin Laden, but other than that, in thanking the troops for their sacrifices, other than that, it wasn't a major issue as well. I think we need, and I always have to thank my friend Marty Malconian for bringing us philosophers down from the clouds and stop worrying about what's right and what's wrong, and talk about things that are of everyday interest to people, and to make the connection between the wars and the economic crisis that we're experiencing. And there certainly is a connection between those two, although you would probably never know about it just by what you hear on the corporate news. We want to keep one thing separate from the other. Are we ever going to get this this PowerPoint? No? It's all, someone's coming? Okay. Well, let me begin. Let me begin with a quick story. And see, the problem is I don't care, but the problem is we don't have that much time to talk here. In 1969, as I completed a tour in Vietnam as a platoon commander, I came home to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I met with, I was one of a number of Marine officers who was asked to sit down with the Commandant of the Marine Corps. That's the big honcho of the Marine Corps. And he wanted to get a sense of, talking with people who just now came back from the country. And when we sat down and started talking, and of course, as usual with these things, he did most of the talking. And as he spoke to us and telling us about what we were doing over there for the last, Marine tour was 13 months at the time. So what we were doing over there for the 13 months had no similarity to what was going on when we were humping around the boonies. And we all started looking at each other and saying, well, what the heck is he talking about? And while, of course, we didn't say that to him, after it was over, we started to try and understand what's going on here. And we thought about it and how things are in the military. When you come back from an operation or from a patrol or something, you report to your immediate commander. For me, it was a company commander. And the company commander would report to the battalion commander, regimental commander, up, and I guess eventually it reaches the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the higher ups. But every time it's like the old talk in someone's ear, tell them the secret and see where it gets by the time it gets to the end is completely irrelevant to what happened in the beginning. Well, it's the same kind of thing. The information that was receiving, that the on top were receiving, was very different from, I guess, what we were saying. So people ended up being completely uninformed. And that's unfortunate, because those allegedly are the people who are making decisions of life and death. So I don't know if I mentioned it, and I think I did, that we are now beginning our 12th year. We have just marked the death of the 2,000th American service person killed in Afghanistan. When we mark these occasions, we very rarely mark the number of Afghans killed, or Iraqis killed, or Somalians killed, but we talk about, and I think it's important that we talk about the deaths of human beings. One of the observations by one of the Afghans who were talking to us upstairs was that we've been fighting for a couple of decades, going back to the 80s when our ally was the Al-Qaeda, when we created Al-Qaeda to fight against the Soviets. But since the 80s, they've lost over 2 million human beings. 2 million human beings, 2 million Afghans are now dead as a result of these wars. And they said, please stop. Please stop. And I can understand that, I think, because I know how much we value our lives, and we should also value the lives of all human beings, because we all have equal value, even though we are Americans. Well, we need to concern ourselves with that as we go on. Now, as you know, the surge is over, and we are now going on for about another year. I mean, I think we're down to 68,000, somewhere around there, from about 100,000 with American troops. I think the total is about 102,000 with NATO troops, somewhere around there. If I had my statistics, I would be able to tell you exactly. So we're somewhere around there. And my understanding is by the end of next year, we will have brought down our involvement, our active involvement in the war. And after that, I think from 2014 on, we're going to maintain a presence of about 20,000 troops in Afghanistan. So while we're certainly, or hopefully, bringing down the number of our troops in Afghanistan, especially allegedly the ones who are doing the fighting, we're not going to be fighting anymore. We're going to be training and reacting to terrorism. Who are we training? Well, we're training the Afghans to take care of their own war, to liberate themselves. That's a good thing, I think. It reminds me, there's a lot of similarities. I've been arguing this for about the last 10 years, the similarities between Afghanistan and Vietnam. And people always yelled at me and said, Afghanistan is not Vietnam! Well, you know what? It truly is. It truly is. And we see the similarities in a myriad of places. A myriad of places. So we're told that we need to stay because to go would be to abandon the Afghan people, but we're going to stay and train them and Afghanicize the war. That's my word. Because Nixon's word was Vietnamization. We're going to turn the war back over to the Vietnamese. So now we are Afghanicizing the war, turning the war over to the Afghans. Well, as many of you know who read the paper, and I'm sure all of you do, as of a couple of days ago, 52 American troops have been killed by insider assaults. 52 Americans have been killed by the people that were training. Green on blue attacks. So, maybe that's not working so well. The people that we are training to kill and the people that we're equipping with weapons are using that training and using those weapons to kill us. That's not a good thing. So much so that now we have what's called guardian angels, I believe they call them, and that's American troops armed who actually watch over the Afghan troops to ensure that they don't turn around and kill the people who are training them. That's really not a great environment in which to live. And certainly, war is, and take it from me, war is stressful enough without even having to worry about the people that are next to you with a gun, the people that you're allegedly training to fight these wars. So, how are we doing?
Not sure.
Oh. No good, right? Yeah.
Being brilliant.
No. Well, let me just tell you about some of the hard statistics as I can remember them. We are at this point spending. I think we've spent about $1.3 trillion on this war thus far. $1.3 trillion. That's on Iraq and Afghanistan. I think with 500 and something billion on Afghanistan alone. Now think all the wonderful money wonderful things that could be done with that money, other than spend it on a war. A lot of wonderful things. And if I had my slide, I would show you some of the wonderful things you would be able to do with it. So we're spending all this money on war when we could be using it elsewhere. And that's kind of interesting. In an economist, Stiglitz, I think his name is Stiglitz, right? He recently wrote a book in which he talked about, I think the name of it was $3 trillion war, was it something like that? $3 trillion war, in which he spoke that when all is said and done here, this war is going to cost us over $3 trillion. But I think as they renew their numbers now, I think they brought that up somewhat to somewhere between about $5 trillion. So this war is going to eventually cost us some $5 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that could be better spent elsewhere. Well, what about the human cost? Well, as I mentioned, there's some 2,000 American soldiers that were killed. I forget how many injured there were. 50,000, somewhere around there, injured. Many suffering with the signature injury of Afghanistan and Iraq, traumatic brain injury. 1 out of every 3 service person who served in Iraq and in Afghanistan are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, which will cost us billions and billions of dollars as well in treating these veterans if they can get treatment. What else? Suicide rate among so far this year it's about 1 every day commits suicide. 1 active duty service person, active duty alone, commits suicide every day. It's the highest rate of suicide ever among veterans and active duty service people. I think some 900 people who are already seeking treatment at the Veterans Administration have attempted to commit suicide. So obviously, war has an awful effect on people, and something we need to deal with. Now, why am I saying all this stuff? Well, I think these are the kinds of look. I'm not an absolute pacifist, which means that I don't believe that any and every war is intrinsically immoral or illegal. I don't believe that. I mean, I think, at least theoretically, there may be some wars, that are necessary, and perhaps even legal and moral. But we take for granted that war is presumptively wrong. War in and of itself involves killing people. So it's wrong. Unless we can justify it. Unless we can find a consistent and adequate warrant for what we're doing. And if we can, and under scrutiny of course, well, then maybe we should go ahead and do that. Now, I don't know if that's the case in Afghanistan. And I certainly question whether or not, since we're all leaving next year anyway, and since the surge that was so heralded obviously that doesn't work because there's more IEDs being used against us and more attacks against us now than before the surge. American intelligence records that, in their view, the Taliban are stronger today than they were in what was it, when it's 2000 and, when did the surge start? It's a couple of years ago, 2008 or so. So obviously the surge wasn't all that successful, and our whole focus from liberation is now down to, well, let's just keep everything calm so we can get the hell out of here next year. Now, look, let's just, if you want to do that, if you want to declare victory and we'll leave, that's fine with me. That's fine with me. I remember wanting them to do that as I was sludging around rice paddies and people were hanging yellow ribbon around the trees and putting bumper stickers on their cars to support the troops. I said, you know what, screw that, get me the hell out of here. Because this is insane. This is insane. And of course no one listened, but I think there comes a time when we got to say, enough, enough. President Obama, when he was in Bagram a couple of months ago, said, I will not keep American forces in harm's way any longer than I have to. Okay, Mr. President, what are we going to accomplish now? We're going to keep our troops in Afghanistan from now until at least until 2014, and then to 2024 for another 10 years, a minimal force. What are we going to accomplish in the next year or the next 10 years that we couldn't accomplish in the last 11? What's going to happen? What's the change going to be? It doesn't look all that good. We aren't making these great strides. There isn't positive outcome here that we can focus on and say, yeah, as Westmoreland told us, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and then Tet happened. So I don't even see any light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think anyone does. I don't think anyone does. No one is trying to make that argument. No one is trying to make that argument. We're just trying to mark time for political reasons while people died, while our soldiers and Marines died. Now, I'm very pro-military, very pro-military. You're not going to send my Marines to die for nothing. You're not going to send my Marines to die for nothing. So get it together and proclaim victory, and let's get the heck out of there, because nothing is being accomplished and nothing will be accomplished. It was a quagmire from the beginning, and it remains a quagmire. It's the graveyard of empires. We didn't learn that lesson. We should. So let's get out now.
Well, as you can see, Mac is used to improvising and problem solving. We're so sorry for the technical glitch, but so delighted that you're here to share not only this analysis, but your own direct experience and passion about these concerns. We're delighted now to turn things over for some comments from our own wonderful students, Angela Ruffini and Matt Lawler. We'll each take a few minutes and react to, comment on Mac's presentation. Mac, is that good? So Angela, I think you're first.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Bica. That was a very that was a very compelling argument. But I'm inclined to ask questions regarding the initial invasion of the war. And I mean, you're saying it's a quagmire from the beginning, so are you alluding to the fact that it wasn't justified from the beginning?
The Afghan people didn't bomb us, and the Afghan people didn't fly planes into the Twin Towers. The vast majority of the people who are involved in that, if in fact it's the case that that's what really happened, and the story that we hear, those were Saudis. And Saudi Arabia is a very important friend of ours and an ally of ours. So we chose not to bomb and invade Saudi Arabia, even though those were the perpetrators of the crime. Now I know that Al Qaeda had bases in Afghanistan, and that's the basis for that. And certainly when Obama came into office and he was asked to come up with some sort of goal or purpose, because we're kind of stupid, If we're slogging around fighting and killing people and people killing us, we kind of like to know that there's something real here. Well, what are we doing? What are we accomplishing? We know we're trying to stay alive, and we know we're trying to keep our friends and buddies alive. That's our primary purpose out there. No one fights for ideology and flag and country, let me tell you that. That goes away in about 2 seconds. We fight to survive, and we fight for the people that we love that are standing next to us. That's what it's about. We like to know that there's some purpose and goal here. So the purpose and goal was to defeat Al Qaeda. That's what Mr. Obama said when he came into office, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Well, right after he said that, Karzai, who the president of Afghanistan, said, "Well, there's no Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. They're over in Pakistan." Well, why are we fighting? Oh, now we're getting rid of the Taliban, and now we're doing regime change. We're liberating the people. We have to fight for that. But that wasn't. This is like mission creep, All of a sudden now we're adding on things, and it gets confusing after a while, because I don't think anyone really knows why we're there anymore, at least. So you know what? If there was justification to go in and rid Afghanistan of Al Qaeda, and if that was done early on, we should have said, mission accomplished, let's get out. So if I grant you that maybe the initial action in Afghanistan was at least had some justification, certainly our prolonged presence, our occupation, our regime change has no justification.
Matt?
Thank you very much for the speech earlier, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
I'm inclined to ask, to sort of respond to what you said about the threat of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban still. Do you believe that we are justified in currently leaving if the threat, do you believe first the threat of the Taliban Al-Qaeda is credible still, warranting that we have killed Osama bin Laden and a lot of the high leaders of the movement, and where are these attacks coming from if not?
Well, a couple of questions, but let me just straighten something out. Taliban is not Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is not the Taliban. Two different animals here. Well, we certainly pissed a lot of people off, that's for sure. Taliban has no, you're never going to see a Taliban coming to this country and exploding a bomb. That's not what they do. They're Islamic fundamentalists. They want to instill Sharia law in Afghanistan and live according to their fundamentalist interpretation of the religion, and that's what they want to do. They want all occupiers out. That's their goal. That's what they want to do. So there is no threat to us, to the homeland. I hate that word, but to the homeland, the fatherland, from the Taliban. So I don't worry about the Taliban. Is Al-Qaeda the terrorists a threat to us? Yes. The terrorists are always a threat. But terrorism is a tactic. It's not a nation. You don't invade a country to fight a tactic. What we need to do is to have really good police work. If you'll notice over the last 10 years, the vast majority of terrorist plots that we've uncovered were not uncovered by the military. It's not their job. Their job is to kill people. That's what we do. We do it well. It's the job of the police, and the police have been very effective. So we need a really good police network program in order to rid, at least not, they're going to rid the world. You're not going to rid the world of terrorists as long as you keep creating them. You see, if I'm living in a village and we confuse insurgent with terrorist. Don't confuse that. Because a terrorist and an insurgent is just someone who's now pissed off because you killed their mother, their son, and their daughter, and they don't like that. So now they want to kill you, or they want to rid you from their land. So that's what we call insurgents. That's different from terrorists. An insurgent is not coming to your house to try and kill you. They just want you out. So as long as we keep creating these people, the people who want to kill us, the fight is going to continue. So maybe we just need, and look, I'm not saying, oh, it's our fault, even though it is our fault. But let us just let's be calm about this. Let's find ways of doing this that works. That's all I'm saying. Find a way that works. Because after 10 years, 11 years, and 2,000 deaths, and look, my war was 40 years ago, and I wake up at night still thinking about it. Still. War never goes away. It never goes away. See, one day, you know what? One day Afghanistan will end. One day, someday. It's going to end. And you know what? You all are going to forget all about it. It's going to be part of the history books, and you're going to read about it in your history class. That's going to be it. But those of you who were there, I don't know if I see a serviceman. Were you in Afghanistan? Are you Afghan vet? Those of you anybody been in Afghanistan? Okay, those of you who've been in Afghanistan, anyone who's been in war will have that as a focus in their life until the day they die, because war never goes away. I used to run a group, PTSD group, of World War II vets. World War II vets. Now their wars even further back than mine. And one group, one old timer was talking about the Bataan Death March. I know you probably don't even know about this, but if you do, you know the horror of it. They were talking about the Bataan Death March like it happened yesterday. Like it happened yesterday. War never goes away. So whether or not Afghanistan was a wonderful cause at the time, we should have been out of there a long time ago. Let's not let one more person die as a result of a failed policy, as a result of political arrogance and a lack of concern for our fellow human beings. So, it took so long.
Now, I definitely agree with your comment that as far as America is concerned and America's police force, yes, we have been successful in countering terrorism for the most part, with obviously some minor exceptions. But how do we counter terrorism when it's happening, when it's being planned in other countries like, let's say, Afghanistan, if we're not striking it at the source? If we're not, going in there and doing what we need to do and making sure that the Afghan security forces are better equipped to deal with not necessarily the Taliban, but the Al-Qaeda that the Taliban is harboring, and allowing them to enter the country and plotting events like 9/11 and future events if that is going to occur. Like, what do you suggest we do at that point?
The hypotheticals in philosophy are wonderful things, but we have to be careful with hypotheticals. We've been saying, well, what happens this, what happens this? I don't see any reason why, if we left Afghanistan tomorrow, number one, that the Afghan people, who are not crazy about we drove the Afghan people into the arms of the Taliban. So when the Taliban are paying X amount of dollars a day, when there's like 45% unemployment, and that's the only place that there's jobs, and when the Taliban are providing some kind of medical treatment for your family to try and heal your son and daughter who was killed in a freaking drone attack, you can get people who sympathize with your cause. But the Afghan people, the Pashtuns, even though the Taliban are Pashtuns, the Pashtuns are not crazy about this brand of fundamentalism. So I'm not sure if we should leave, whether or not the Taliban are going to take over. They may, or at least will be some joint government or something. I'm also quite doubtful whether or not the Taliban would want to get involved with Al-Qaeda. I doubt that. So I'm not all that worried about that. The next point that I think needs to be pointed out is, how good are we doing? I mean, yes, okay. How are we going to remedy the situation of terrorism unless we bomb people? Okay, we have terrorism and we're bombing people. How are we doing? We're still here, 11 years, with no successful conclusion in sight. We're going to cut and run someday, sooner or later. But are you gonna die there, my Marine friend? Or someone else's son? Now, I know the vast majority of us, I think that someone said 0.05% of the population has a direct or even indirect correlation with the war. Most of us have been successfully separate from the war, so we have no personal involvement. So much so that people want to bring back the draft in order to make it hurt us all, so that we might, take to the streets. But I'm not for that. But I'm not sure if I want my son or daughter to be the last one to die in a futile effort, when we all realize, and the powers that be all realize, that there's no winning this. There's no successful conclusion to this. It's all a matter of marking time, and my Marines are dying there, and I don't like it. So we know as Marines that we die. That's what we're here for. But we don't die for nothing. And that's their responsibility. See, we have a contract when we sign that paper. We say, yeah, we're going to, I'm giving up parts of my liberty, and I'm going to do what I can to bring freedom to this nation. And that's all baloney, because there's nothing about this struggle right now that has anything to do with freedom. But so yeah, we take that oath and we take that contract seriously. But there's also responsibility and obligation on the other side. And part of their responsibility is to use us wisely. We take for granted that when they send us into harm's way, it's going to be for a real cause, something that's necessary. And this clearly, and everyone knows about it, and everyone accepts it at this point. Maybe Senator McCain is the only one that he's ready to go bomb Iran. Now, how sick is that? But yet we continue on. We know we're leaving next year. Why wait? How are things going to be better in a year from now, given the situation right now, than they are right now? Let's get out. Let's get out now.
Okay, Matt, one more question for Matt, and then we'll open things up for some comments and questions.
Drawing on history, you mentioned earlier the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and the withdrawal of their forces left the country wide open for the takeover by terrorist organizations. Now, you mentioned wanting to keep troops safer, and it sounds almost as if you disagree with much of the strategy that is being taken in Afghanistan, but a full withdrawal might lead to the same result as the Soviet withdrawal. How would you respond to that?
There is going to be chaos when we withdraw, because we have manipulated, we've set up a puppet government and a puppet president, Karzai, who rules Kabul and nowhere else, and everyone knows that. So when we leave, there's going to be a push for power. All those Northern Alliance warlords are going to be jockeying for position, and that's going to be inevitable. And it happened in Vietnam. It's part of the blowback that occurs when we meddle in other people's affairs. You see, you mentioned how the Soviets abandoned the Afghan people, but what you failed to mention was how we abandoned the Afghan people. Because if you remember, during that war, we were heavily involved arming and training the Mujahideen. Who are the Mujahideen? Al-Qaeda. Our boy in Afghanistan was none other than Osama bin Laden. So we created these people. We sought out the most radical, the most Islamic fundamentalists we could find in order to motivate them to fight against the Soviet Union. Our proxy war against the Soviet Union. And then when that all went insane and the Soviets cut and ran, like we're going to eventually do, well, we had no more purpose there because we didn't know all the minerals that they had yet. Now we know. So we had no purpose there, so we ran as well, and good luck. And in that vacuum, the Taliban came to power. An interesting, we always use it, and I'll anticipate maybe your question. One of the justifications we use, well, look at the plight of a woman. What's going to happen to the women of Afghanistan should we leave? Well, interestingly, a question was asked to the Afghan youth about that. And they asked, well, is the condition of women better now that the Americans there, better now under the new government than it was before? Ariel, what did he answer?
Well, they said if having your family killed by drones and having, they were talking about 8 women who were killed in a drone strike, if that's a better situation for women, then, obviously it isn't. They said no.
Yes, basically. Yes. Rape is still occurring. Women have been denied. Karzai is very quick to trade civil rights for political power. Karzai has brought into his group there many of the same old Northern Alliance warlords who have no desire for any equality of women. So I actually had a wonderful quote from a woman from Rawa, which is a women's organization in Afghanistan, but unfortunately you're not going to share that, about her feelings. And women want us out as well, because now not only do they have to concern themselves about the Taliban and the religious fundamentalists, but they have to concern themselves about the drones. Our wonderful warriors who sit in Buffalo and Albany and Nevada on these Game Boys. Is that what you call it, Game Boys? These video game things. Well, that's what they do. They fight a war thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles away on a Game Boy. You know what a drone is, right? A drone is a robotic aircraft. And all these warriors, he's calling pilots, all these pilots are doing is looking at a screen as you would if you were playing a video game. And they shoot at bleeps on their screen. But this time they're playing it for real because they're killing people thousands and thousands of miles away. And then they get up, clean themselves off, and they go home at night. And people are dying as a result of it. Now, how antiseptic, how more antiseptic can you make killing than that? See, there's a difference between plunging your bayonet in the chest of another person, because now you smell the sweet blood. You see the expression on their face. You know what killing and dying is. But when you're on a game board, and especially when you've been playing video games for the last 15 years and you love it, there's not much of a transition here between killing bleeps on a screen and killing real people in Afghanistan, Somalia, and Libya, and the Philippines, and the Horn of Africa, and so many other places that we now use drones that we don't even know about. Okay, so.
We have time for a few questions. Please, can you come to the mic here in the center so everyone can hear?
I really wanted to ask this question because we were going to ask the Afghan peace volunteers this question, but didn't have time. So on September 21st, there was a Wall Street Journal article about the Andar Revolt, which is local militia in Afghanistan, many of them former Taliban members who are rising up against the Taliban. And as I understand, they're no longer associated with the U.S. and Afghan forces, and they say, we want support for the uprising, but we want the people to maintain ownership of the uprising. And the article said that they were probably the best hope for the downfall of the Taliban. So what are your comments on that? How should the U.S. react to that?
Yeah, I think that's part of what I was trying to get across before, and that is the Afghan people are not crazy. They don't want to go back to that. I mean, so there are openings that we could exploit if we were interested in exploiting them. But we don't seem interested in making those kinds of inroads. We don't want, I don't know if we don't want to bother or what, or is the hammer and the nail thing again. So yeah, I think we should pursue that. And supposedly we're good at those things. Supposedly we know how to, we know how to stage coups, and we know how to play around behind the screens, the scenes. We do it all the time. So why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we exploiting those ways of ending this fiasco? I don't know. I wish we would.
Thank you.
It seems like now we've become more or less at war with Pakistan as well, which is in its own way
scary.
A much bigger problem because Pakistan has the bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And
about 100.
Yeah. Wouldn't you agree that this one argument I've heard recently is that we're sort of in Afghanistan to keep an eye on Pakistan, but it seems like with all the drone strikes and becoming more and more at war with Pakistan, that we're dangerously radicalizing Pakistan even more than they already are, and creating an even bigger threat in that part of the world. And it seems like no one is really talking about Pakistan. We're barely talking about Afghanistan, but that seems to be a huge problem that no one is talking about.
Yes. No, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
I think that's very problematic. And again, we have these drones, and we just Veterans to Peace. We just sent a delegation over there to Pakistan, and they in fact were involved with a Pakistani protest against the drones. And a survey was taken, not by them, but overall, a survey was taken that among the Pakistani people, they now view their number one threat, their number one problem as being the Americans. So that's the problem with drones. That's the problem with wars like this. We're down to now what's called a war of attrition. My war was a war of attrition. See, in World War II, you invaded, you took some land, you held it, you invaded, you fought on, you took some more land, you held it. Eventually, you had all the land, you go home. But Vietnam wasn't like that, and Afghanistan is not like that. Because we don't take land. We just go out to kill the bad guy. And we reason that once we've killed all the bad guys, well, we run. And we finished, and we have victory. But what the problem is, of course, is that we're not going to kill all the bad guys because we're creating more bad guys than we are killing. I think they said of all the people killed in drone attacks, only 2% were these high echelon people that were being targeted. Only 2%. That means 98% of those people were you and I, who happened to be attending a wedding or a funeral. Now, I don't know about you, but if someone blew up my family, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. And I'm going to be taking that gun out, and I'm going to go out there and do what I got to do, because now, it's personal for me. It's personal. So let's do something that works. Let's do something that works in Pakistan. And by the way, how did that happen? We have no declaration of war in Afghanistan. We certainly have no declaration of war in Pakistan. I mean, how are we involved in all these places with no declaration of war? What is it now? The United States can just, no respect for the sovereignty of any nation. We can go anywhere, pluck up anybody we want, or assassinate now. We have to follow Obama's kill list. He has a kill list. You believe our President of the United States has a kill list? What happened to due process? How about innocent until proven guilty? I'm worried someday my name is going to be on that kill list for talking too much. Does that mean now they can come and get me? Well, you know what? They tell me we have to worry about Al-Qaeda and the terrorists. You know what? I fear more what we're doing to ourselves. What we've created ourselves as a result of this. This is where the threat is. The threat is from the civil liberties and the freedoms that we're losing as a result of the paranoia. And maybe that was part of the plan from the beginning. I don't know. But I know when the Patriot Act came about, we started worrying about our emails. We started worrying about our library books. We started worrying about surveillance. My phone's tapped. We start worrying about everything. So where is the American freedoms that we fight so hard to thanks.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Do you support the role of private military companies in supplementing that police network as an alternative to the soldiers?
Those are mercenaries. Mercenaries fight for money, not for allegiance to any nation. So if you go in there and if they're getting $20 to fight for us and you go offer them $22, who are they going to fight for? There's no allegiance. We fight for love of country. We fight because we think it's the right thing to do. And you know what? The mercenaries in Iraq, for example, and even out in Afghanistan, they're subject to no law. They're not subject to the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. They're not subject to American law because they're not in America. And they're not subject to Iraqi law because they were aloof. That's why they kicked us out, because they wanted immunity for these people. So they were running rampant like it was cowboys in the Old West. They were running through, killing people like crazy. So what was happening was that the vengeance that they were incurring from all their craziness was now going on to the soldiers. So the soldiers don't want them there, because they're doing things that these American soldiers can't do and pissing people off, and they're suffering the consequences of it. So no, if we want to fight a war, let's fight it with our own people. I mean, even Machiavelli said that.
We're really almost out of time, so I'll take just one more quick question. I know it's a shame.
Bob a shot.
Okay.
Can you go too?
Yeah.
I'm just worried because the other group will be coming in.
We'll make it quick.
I just wanna ask-
I promise to be quick.
You probably don't know the actual answer, but
I'll make one up then, don't worry.
How many innocent lives were taken on 9/11 compared to the innocent lives that were taken all over the world as a result of 9/11?
All over the world? You're right, I don't know that. But so what? So what?
There were a
One
lot.
life. See, to me, the tragedy of 9/11 was not that 3,000 people got killed, but that one person got killed 3,000 times. So each individual life is important to me. So, philosophically, I always make this argument with other philosophers. Numbers aren't important. Each life is important. So yeah, we are no more important than anyone else in the world, and one of our Americans is no more important than one other person in the world.
Okay, one more question, but while you're getting there, I want to let all of you know about a peace vigil that is on the day of the debate, October 16th, 4:30 to 6 p.m., where people who are concerned about these urgent issues that Mac is raising for us will gather at the south corner of Hempstead Turnpike and California Avenue. So if you want to not only talk about these issues, but express your urgent concern about peace, not only in Afghanistan, but in the world at large, join us all there. Yes, please, last question.
Okay, and thank you, Mac, as always. Given that most of the Afghans do not want us there, given that as of 2 years ago, most Americans don't want us there, given that it costs us $1 million per year per soldier that we have there, why do you think the war has been so prolonged? Why does it continue? What do you think is actually going on? Do you feel that it's the influence of the weapons industry, or do you feel that it's imperialism, or the efforts for America to exert its influence around the world, or a misguided effort to help the Afghans? I'll try to put something nice in there. Do you think it's...
No.
But seriously,
We could care less about that.
What do you think it is, though, that's kept it going?
I think the military-industrial complex has has a profound influence on. And if you listen to Eisenhower's speech when he was coming out of office, that the beware the military-industrial complex. I mean, he was so prescient on and so I think that has a lot to do with it. And I see a military guy.
Sure. Could I just jump in real quick?
Yes.
Like you were saying, less than 1% of our country has served in the military since all this action began. I think the reason why it's allowed to continue so long is because it doesn't affect everyone. If your brother, your mother, your father was serving, you would think every day, wow, why are we doing this? What is going on? But when it's so easy to kind of forget it and let it fall to the side because it doesn't really touch you, it's a lot easier to let things continue on. So people like us who are engaged and actually care about what's going on, we need to try and inspire everyone else around the world to care about things that are going on in our country, because things that don't affect you directly are a lot easier to kind of push to the side. And so that's my 2 cents on why I think.
And that's a wonderful way to conclude.